Sofia Martinez smoothed her blazer as she settled into her seat on the panel. The University of Chicago's annual psychology summit had drawn scholars from across the globe, but Sofia hadn't anticipated the confrontation awaiting her. "With all due respect, Professor Martinez, your framework completely dismisses evolutionary psychology," came the deep voice from across the stage. Marcus Reid, visiting professor of comparative mythology from Edinburgh, leaned forward, his intensity palpable. His steel-grey eyes held hers steadily, unapologetic in his challenge. Sofia felt her chest tighten. Perhaps because evolutionary psychology often serves as convenient cover for regressive gender attitudes, Professor Reid. The audience tensed. What was meant to be a cordial academic discussion had ignited into something raw and electric. Later, at the reception, Sofia found herself cornered by colleagues congratulating her takedown of Reid. Yet watching him across the room, standing alone, quietly observing rather than networking, she felt an unexpected pang of curiosity. There was something about his stillness, his self-contained presence, that seemed at odds with the aggressive academic she'd encountered on stage. When he caught her watching and raised his glass in acknowledgement, Sofia quickly looked away, unsettled by her own reaction. The dream came again that night. Sofia stood before a mirror that reflected not her face, but a shadowy male figure. When she reached toward it, the glass rippled like water. She always woke before her fingers made contact. "You've had this dream since we began discussing masculine archetypes," Dr. Eleanor Wells noted, her voice calm in the soft light of her office. The Jungian analyst's bookshelves were lined with weathered volumes, artifacts from various cultures dotting the spaces between. Sofia shifted in the leather chair. "It started after the conference, after meeting Reid." "And what does Marcus Reid represent to you?" "Arrogance, traditionalism, everything I've spent my career critiquing." Sofia hesitated. But he's not what I expected in person. There's a groundedness to him." Eleanor nodded. "Jung would say that what disturbs us in others is often a projection of our own unintegrated aspects. Your animus, your inner masculine, seeking recognition." Sofia scoffed. "My inner masculine doesn't need to be so confrontational." "Doesn't it?" Eleanor smiled gently. "Your academic work confronts, your advocacy confronts. Perhaps what unsettles you isn't confrontation itself, but authentic masculine energy that isn't performing or apologizing." Sofia left therapy more unsettled than when she'd arrived. The email arrived on a Wednesday morning. Marcus Reid was requesting her contribution to a research project examining mythological archetypes in contemporary gender discourse. Sofia's finger hovered over the delete button. "You should do it," said her department chair, Helen, when Sofia mentioned it over lunch. "Reid's work is controversial, but it's substantial, and interdisciplinary collaboration looks good for tenure review." A week later, Sofia found herself in the university library's private research room, surrounded by books on mythology, depth psychology, and anthropological studies. Marcus arrived carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Black, no sugar," he said, placing one before her. "I noticed at the conference reception." Sofia accepted it warily. "You were watching me?" "We were watching each other, Professor Martinez." His Scottish accent softened the directness of his words. Intellectual opponents often do. As they worked, Sofia observed him closely. There was nothing performative in his movements, no attempt to soften his presence or occupy less space. Yet neither did he intrude on hers. He listened intently when she spoke, challenged her ideas without dismissing them, and occasionally revealed a surprising depth of understanding about feminist theory. "You've actually read Dworkin," she said, surprised. "I've read most of the feminist canon," he replied simply. "How could I understand masculine archetypes without understanding their perceived impact?" By afternoon, Sofia found herself reconsidering. Her initial judgment, Marcus Reid, wasn't simply the embodiment of traditional masculinity she'd assumed. His strength carried a quietness, his conviction a willingness to be wrong. What disturbed her most was her own response. A strange comfort in his uncompromised presence that contradicted everything she thought she valued. "Tell me about a father," Eleanor suggested during their next session. Sofia's hands clenched involuntarily. "What does he have to do with this?" "Our earliest experiences with masculine energy shape our expectations. You've mentioned your father was unpredictable." Sofia stared out the window at the grey Chicago skyline. "He was brilliant, a civil rights attorney. Everyone admired him." She paused. "At home, his anger filled rooms. We never knew what might trigger it. A misplaced book, my mother's tone of voice, a question asked at the wrong moment. So you learned that masculine power was dangerous, unpredictable." "I learned to anticipate it, to manage it, to control it," Eleanor corrected gently. "Which might explain your academic focus, creating theoretical frameworks to contain and explain masculine behavior." The realization followed Sofia into her next research session with Marcus. They were reviewing cross-cultural coming-of-age rituals when he shared something unexpected. "After my military service, I couldn't connect with anyone," he said quietly. "The military trains you to compartmentalize emotion, to equate vulnerability with weakness. It took years of therapy to unlearn." Sofia looked up, surprised by his disclosure. "What changed?" "I studied indigenous warrior cultures, men who were both fierce protectors and emotionally expressive. I realized I'd been taught a distorted version of masculinity." His eyes met hers. "Much of my research examines how modern men can reclaim emotional integrity without sacrificing strength." Sofia felt something shift in her perception. Marcus's journey toward an integrated masculinity paralleled her own struggle to reconcile intellectual strength with emotional vulnerability, a connection she was unprepared to acknowledge. "He's playing you," Diane insisted over wine at their favorite bistro. Sofia's closest colleague leaned forward, her expression concerned. "Men like Reid know exactly how to present themselves to seem enlightened while maintaining fundamentally regressive views." Sofia swirled her Cabernet. "You haven't even met him." "I don't need to. I've read his work on the warrior archetype in modern men. It's just repackaged patriarchy." As Diane continued, Sofia recognized the familiar pattern. Men categorized as either safe allies who followed feminist orthodoxy without question or dangerous traditionalists to be opposed. No room for nuance, complexity, or integration. "Maybe it's more complicated," Sofia suggested. Diane's eyebrows rose. "That's not like you. You're usually the first to critique essentialist masculine ideals." Later that night, Sofia revisited Marcus's published work with fresh eyes. His analysis was more nuanced than she'd initially credited, examining how mythological archetypes offered pathways for psychological integration, not reinforcement of stereotypes. She found herself wondering how often she'd dismissed perspectives that didn't align with her academic position, and what that dismissal might be protecting her from confronting in herself. The campus erupted over a controversial speaker, an evolutionary psychologist whose work on gender differences had drawn fierce criticism. The psychology department faculty meeting to discuss security measures quickly devolved into heated debate. "We should cancel. His research has been weaponized by misogynistic groups," argued Professor Winters from clinical psychology. "Canceling only martyrs him," countered Professor Chen from cognitive science. All eyes turned to Marcus, the visiting faculty member, clearly expecting him to defend the speaker. "Both positions assume our students can't think critically," Marcus said calmly. "Instead of cancelling or pretending neutrality, why not create contextualizing events? Panel discussions examining his methodology, workshops on distinguishing between data and interpretation." Sofia found herself nodding before she realized it. We could organize student-led responses, turn it into a teaching opportunity about scientific ethics and social responsibility. The surprise on her colleagues' faces mirrored her own internal confusion. She had aligned with Marcus, the man whose position she had expected to oppose. After the meeting, he fell into step beside her as they crossed the quad. "That was unexpected," he said. "Me agreeing with you? You putting intellectual engagement above ideological comfort." His tone held no judgment, only observation. Sofia stopped walking. "Is that how you see my work? Ideologically comfortable? I see your work as brilliant but sometimes constrained by the very frameworks you've created to make sense of a chaotic world." His gaze was direct, uncompromising, yet without aggression. "We all have our intellectual safe houses, Professor Martinez." The accusation stung precisely because it contained truth. Sofia had built her academic identity on certain assumptions about gender dynamics, assumptions that provided security but perhaps limited her vision. "And what's your safe house, Professor Reid?" she challenged. He smiled slightly. "The belief that I can fully understand the masculine without fully experiencing its absence." He gestured to the path ahead. "Shall we continue?" Their research collaboration extended into summer. One evening, working late in Marcus's campus office, Sofia noticed a small painting behind his desk, a watercolor of a woman with flowing hair merging into a stream. "My sister's work," he explained, following her gaze. "Painted after my return from Afghanistan." "It's beautiful," Sofia said. "There's something transformative about it." Marcus nodded. "That was a transformative time. I was struggling with what Jung would call anima integration, reconnecting with the feminine aspects of myself that military service had suppressed." "How did that manifest?" Sofia asked, genuinely curious. "Anger, mostly. I couldn't understand why civilian life felt so unstructured. My therapist helped me recognize I was projecting my disowned feminine traits, intuition, emotional receptivity, onto the women in my life, then resenting them for embodying what I couldn't express." Sofia considered this. Jung believed we all contain masculine and feminine energies, and that psychological completion requires integration rather than rejection, Marcus added. "My research on warrior cultures revealed something fascinating. The most effective protectors were those who embraced feminine wisdom alongside masculine strength." As he spoke about his journey towards psychological wholeness, Sofia recognized herself in his story. Her own rejection of certain aspects of femininity she deemed disempowering, her intellectualization of emotion, her armor of academic language. "What happens when we reject parts of ourselves?" she asked quietly. "We project them onto others, either idealizing or demonizing those qualities," Marcus replied. "And we remain incomplete." Sofia's research took a new direction that summer, exploring cultural myths about masculinity across different societies. The library became her second home, as she immersed herself in anthropological studies, mythological analyses, and Jungian interpretations of cross-cultural symbols. Patterns emerged, societies that integrated masculine and feminine principles, created balanced mythological systems, while those that separated them tended toward extremes of either dominance or passivity. The collective stories shaped individual psychology, generation after generation. "You're entering Jung's territory now," Eleanor observed during therapy. The collective unconscious, those shared symbols and archetypes that transcend individual experience. "I'm seeing how these collective patterns shape personal expectations," Sofia explained. "How women's fear of authentic masculine energy might reflect cultural narratives rather than just individual trauma." And your own fear? Eleanor probed gently. Sofia hesitated. I'm beginning to wonder if what I've feared isn't masculinity itself, but its power to awaken something in me that I've denied. My own authority, my own strength, my own unapologetic presence. Eleanor nodded. Jung would say we fear in others what we refuse to acknowledge in ourselves. That evening, Sofia dreamed of the mirror again. But this time, when she touched the glass, her reflection transformed, not into a shadowy male figure, but into herself, standing straighter, eyes fierce with purpose, neither masculine nor feminine, but simply, completely human. The email from Department Chair Helen Cooper arrived on a Tuesday. Concerns about recent research direction. Meeting requested. In Helen's office, the message became clear. The committee has questions about your shift toward Jungian analysis. It's unconventional for your track record. Unconventional or inconsistent with my previous political positioning? Sofia asked directly. Helen's uncomfortable silence confirmed it. My exploration of archetypal psychology doesn't contradict my feminist foundations, Sofia argued. It deepens them by examining the psychological structures underlying gender dynamics. Some colleagues worry you're legitimizing essentialist perspectives. I'm investigating how cultural myths shape our perceptions of gender. That's hardly essentialist, Helen sighed. You've built your reputation challenging traditional masculinity, Sofia. Now you're collaborating with Reid, integrating Jungian concepts that many consider outdated. It raises questions. Sofia felt a familiar tightness in her chest, the need to accommodate, to adjust her position to maintain approval. But something had changed. The work mattered more than the perception. My research follows the evidence, not ideological comfort, she said, echoing Marcus's observation about her. If that challenges our department's assumptions, perhaps those assumptions deserve scrutiny. Walking out of Helen's office, Sofia felt strangely liberated. She had stood in her authority without aggression, but also without apology, embodying the very integration of strength and authenticity she was researching. When she told Marcus about the confrontation, his response surprised her. What will you do? He asked simply, not offering to intervene, not suggesting strategic retreat, just acknowledging her agency and awaiting her decision. Continue the research, Sofia said with newfound certainty. It's too important to abandon. His slight nod carried more affirmation than effusive praise could have conveyed. The Jungian Psychology Retreat Center, nestled in Wisconsin's North Woods, provided the perfect setting for Sofia's deepening inner work. Cedar cabins surrounded a central lodge where workshops on active imagination, dream analysis, and shadow integration filled the weekend schedule. In a session on animus work, the facilitator guided participants through a visualization exercise. Imagine meeting your inner masculine in a safe space, she instructed, not as society has shaped it, but as your authentic self expresses it. Sofia closed her eyes, expecting to encounter resistance. Instead, she found herself standing in her childhood home's library, her father's domain. But the figure waiting wasn't her father. It was a version of herself, exuding quiet confidence, analytical sharpness tempered with compassion. You've been here all along, Sofia whispered to the presence. The figure nodded. Integration, not rejection, came the thought. That evening, walking along the lakeshore, Sofia found Marcus sitting on a dock, watching the sunset. I didn't know you were attending, she said, surprised. I present a workshop tomorrow on masculine archetypes in healing rituals. He gestured to the space beside him. The sunset here reminds me of the Scottish Highlands. As they sat in comfortable silence, Sofia considered how drastically her perception of this man had changed. What had initially registered as threatening now felt grounding. His directness no longer seemed like aggression, but clarity. His confidence, not dominance, but self-knowledge. "I've been thinking about fear," Sofia said finally. "How what we fear often reflects what we've denied in ourselves." Marcus nodded. Jung called it the shadow, those disowned parts that terrify us when we encounter them externally. I'm beginning to think women's fear of masculine energy might be fear of our own capacity for power, direct, unapologetic, self-assured. Just as men's discomfort with feminine energy reflects fear of our own vulnerability, intuition, and emotional depth, Marcus added. The sun sank below the tree line, painting the lake in crimson and gold. In that moment, Sofia recognized that her relationship with Marcus had transcended professional collaboration or intellectual sparring. It had become a mirror for her own integration journey, challenging not because of who he was, but because of what he awakened in her. The International Association for Analytical Psychology conference in Zurich provided the perfect forum for Sofia's evolving research. Standing at the podium in the historic Jung Institute, she surveyed the audience of scholars, therapists, and students. "Our cultural fear of integrated masculinity," she began, "reflects a collective psychological wound. When women reject authentic masculine energy, whether in men or in themselves, they often reject their own authority, power, and self-sovereignty." As she presented her research, tracing patterns across cultural myths, psychological case studies, and contemporary gender discourse, Sofia felt a new congruence between her words and her presence. She stood firmly in her expertise without defensiveness, engaged opposing viewpoints with respect rather than reactivity, and conveyed both intellectual rigor and emotional authenticity. During the Q&A, a prominent Jungian analyst challenged her. "Aren't you simply repackaging conservative gender ideals in psychological language?" 2 years ago, Sofia would have bristled, feeling her feminist credentials threatened. Today, she smiled. "I'm suggesting that true liberation comes not from rejecting masculine energy, but from transforming and integrating it. The feminine principle, without the masculine, lacks agency. The masculine, without the feminine, lacks connection. Psychological wholeness requires both." Afterward, women approached her, scholars, therapists, students, many expressing how her framework helped them recognize their own unacknowledged fears and projections. "Your presentation was remarkable," Marcus said later at the conference dinner. "You've evolved this research beyond our initial collaboration." "Because I stopped fighting the integration in myself," Sofia acknowledged. Academic Sofia would have qualified every statement, anticipated every criticism. "Today I just spoke my truth." "That's the essence of individuation," Marcus observed, "becoming who you truly are beneath the adaptations and defenses." Sofia considered him across the table, this man who had catalyzed her journey, not by changing her, but by being so completely himself that she could no longer avoid her own authenticity. "Thank you," she said simply, "for being the mirror I needed." Sofia's final therapy session with Dr. Wells coincided with Chicago's first snowfall. Through the office window, white flakes transformed the urban landscape into something softer, more unified. "You seem different," Eleanor observed. "There's an integration happening," Sofia nodded. "I'm less afraid of certain qualities I used to reject: authority, directness, power, and I'm more accepting of vulnerability, uncertainty. Jung would say, you're embodying the syzygy, the divine coupling of masculine and feminine principles within the self." "It's changing everything," Sofia admitted. "My research, my teaching, my relationships, including with Professor Reid," Sofia smiled. "We're navigating something new, neither defined by traditional dynamics nor by their rejection, something authentic to who we both are." The journey toward wholeness is ongoing, Eleanor reminded her. Integration isn't a destination, but a practice. Later that evening, Sofia and Marcus walked through snowy Grant Park. Their academic collaboration had evolved into a deeper connection, one that challenged both of their assumptions and patterns. "I'm presenting at Stanford next month," Marcus mentioned. "They've asked me to extend my visiting position for another year." Sofia felt the familiar tightening, the fear of abandonment she'd carried since childhood. But instead of reacting, she acknowledged it. "I'll miss our work together," she said honestly, "but it's a great opportunity." "I've been considering turning it down," he admitted. "There's important work happening here in Chicago." Sofia stopped, walking. "Don't make decisions based on whatever this is between us. That's not wholeness. It's old patterns." Marcus studied her face. "You're right. I need to make this choice from clarity, not reaction." They continued walking, their footprints leaving parallel tracks in the fresh snow. "What if we collaborate remotely?" Sofia suggested. "Your perspective on warrior initiation rites would strengthen my research on modern male coming-of-age experiences." "Professional collaboration while we see where this personal connection leads?" Marcus clarified. "Exactly. No predetermined outcomes, no compromising individual paths." As they reached Buckingham Fountain, now silent for winter, Sofia reflected on her journey. The fear she'd felt upon first meeting Marcus hadn't disappeared. It had transformed into recognition. What had seemed threatening was actually familiar. Her own disowned power, her capacity for uncompromised selfhood. Jung had written that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Her irritation had indeed become understanding, not just of Marcus, but of the integrated wholeness possible when we stop projecting and start embracing all aspects of our humanity. The journey toward wholeness continued, unfinished, challenging, and alive with possibility.